after I got my bachelor's degree, I knew that grad school was kind of like the next thing that I needed to do, but I didn't have the conviction that I was all in. You know, it was kind of like, okay, this is practical, but there wasn't yet, I felt like the confirmation that it was actually God's path for my life.
And did that matter?
I think it did, because I wasn't sure I was committed to it.
Welcome back to another episode of Kingdom Heirs, where faith meets business, inspiring the kingdom-minded entrepreneur. Today, I have the great privilege of having Shelah Maul with me, who happens to be my sister-in-law, a speech pathologist, spending 23 years working in one of the most liberal school districts in Maryland, with her great ability of speech therapy. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Happy you're here.
Happy to be here.
So Shelah's visiting us from Maryland, down in Texas. We're in Corpus Christi, Texas. Shelah, you're coming from which area of Maryland?
Frederick.
Frederick.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
So I met you. I guess I was probably 18 when I met you.
Yeah. We go way back.
We go way back. I'm just slightly older than 18 now. But Shelah, and you're married. You guys have been married for, you and Brian?
15 years.
15 years. Yes. And so one of the things that I wanted to bring Shelah on for today was we want to talk about speech pathology, speech therapy. We want to talk about an industry of why you chose that. Not only that, but how can someone who might be in a similar industry, and you don't work private practice, you actually chose to be in a school district, right?
Yep.
So you work with students, not necessarily patients. You call them students.
Yep.
And you work with a lot of families, right? And so I think that would be there's some things that would be nice to hear from you on how people that are listening, they might know someone who suffers from a speech impediment, and they like, what? I don't really know what to, how do I interact with them? So I know some good tips on that. Maybe some early detection tips as well, or signs of early detection that you can share with us.
Sure.
But one of the first things I want to ask you is, why did you choose this industry? And was it something that you felt called to do, or is it something that you just saw the money, you're like, that's going to be a really good thing, I want to go after that? Like, what is it? What made you choose speech therapy?
So I'm one of a big family, one of 8, not as big as yours, but
8 is still a lot.
Yeah.
What number are you?
3.
You're the third from the top.
Yeah.
All right.
From the top. So I would just say my calling into speech therapy started when I was 14, maybe even a little younger, maybe like 12, but then I didn't realize it was my calling until I was like 14.
Okay.
But I would say it was an incremental calling. It started when I was in 8th grade and I was being homeschooled because of my brother, Elijah. And so I wasn't homeschooled because of my brother Elijah, but
This is when you
home.
Yeah.
And he had therapists that would come to the house. So physical therapists and occupational therapists and speech therapists. And I was probably, 10 or 12 or something in that range. And I wanted to watch them work. So my mom would let me go sit on the living room couch. And I was always there for every therapy session because I just was so interested.
That's cool.
And so I would say that's kind of where my interest was piqued. And then before I graduated high school, my mom set it up so I could shadow the speech therapist, Elijah's speech therapist. And
at other locations?
Just in a school, just in his school.
In the school. Wow.
Yeah. So when he was little, under the age of 3, speech therapists and physical therapists and OTs would come to the house. But then once he was school age, then he was eligible to receive it through the school.
Got it.
And then I believe my mom had to bring him to the school.
Yes.
At that point.
Got it.
So
she was able to organize for you to see it firsthand from the school perspective.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I shadowed her. So, I feel like it's been, when you start something when you're so young, it just kind of feels like it's always been your thing.
Yeah, that's right.
So, it was pretty much my whole life was kind of on this path. So I would say my mom nudged me and kind of said, oh, you have a good ear. You could, you really like grammar,
That's good.
I was always writing in my journal. I was always looking up vocabulary words. So I've always had this interest in language. So I just kind of was like, oh, what else am I going to do? You know?
Yes.
That's kind of how it started.
So that's cool. And so from there, you graduated high school, and you're like, where am I going to go to school? What am I going to do? And so you followed that. You followed that track.
Yeah. Yeah. So I started right from high school, and I went right to my bachelor's degree, and I got it in communication sciences and disorders. And at that point, I felt like I was just doing what was logical, like kind of like what was in front of me. This is kind of like the logical progression. But I wouldn't say that I had a strong conviction that it was the Lord that was saying, this is my path for you. It was more like, I'm a practical person. I'm very practical. And I think I worked it out practically.
That
like,
makes sense.
okay, so I'll have summers off, and this is like good money, and I'm going to be playing with puzzles because I saw they just play games, and that's good money to play games. Like, that's what I thought it was. And it's just very practical.
So you know what my brain just did?
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys that look at earth moving equipment, digging holes.
Yeah.
And they're like, that looks so much fun. I could just operate bulldozers and play in the dirt, and I can get paid really well at it.
Yeah.
And that sounds great. Sign me up.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm just sorry. That's how my brain, I was like playing with puzzles. Oh, this could be a great time.
Yeah, this is a career. Like,
Well, you know,
playing
if
with
you
puzzles.
could choose, if you honestly could choose what you want to do in life,
Right.
shouldn't you choose something that you actually you think and you know you would have fun doing?
I think so.
That you wouldn't feel like it really was work?
Yeah.
Even though it is, like, it takes effort,
Right.
but you actually just would want to, you just enjoy doing it.
Yeah. Exactly. It looked like they were just playing.
But in that process, obviously, it's structured to help them to advance and grow. And
But there's a lot more to it than playing.
now we realize 23 years in.
There's a lot
yeah.
more to it than playing. But I suppose if someone was watching you, it might
just
look
looks like
like it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more that goes into it.
Yeah.
You learn that.
I have sat in.
Yeah.
I've sat in on some OT. Was it OT and ST? Speech therapy.
Speech therapy.
I've
Yeah.
sat in some sessions, some of our kids over the years, and I'm like, y'all are just playing games.
Yeah.
But then I realized, I'm like, oh yeah, no, it's very structured.
Yep.
And I'm like, no, they're actually going after certain things to help them improve.
So
yeah.
I asked Rocco this morning, do you like your speech therapist? Oh, yeah, it's fun. So games and playing is the side door for kids to learning.
Yes.
So we always bring games and play into it, but so they don't realize that we're like, you know,
Really
keeping
teaching
it
them.
fun. How
Yeah.
to keep it fun. So the games are for them
That makes sense.
to make them engaged and like coming and think it's fun.
Well, he loves going in.
Yeah.
And he's like, Daddy, I want to get that. I want to show you what games I play with in here.
Yeah.
And so he's like, come on in, Dad. I'm like, I don't think I'm supposed to go in there. And he's like, no, I want you to come in here, Daddy, because I was bringing him instead of Megan one day.
Yeah.
And his therapist is like, oh, no, you can come in. And I'm like, all right, cool. So they sat me in a corner, and they like peeled out all these games. And he's like, look, Dad, look. And I'm like, all right, now I know why he loves coming here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we all do that.
So you had,
part of that.
so from getting into, so you then pursued college, right?
Yes.
So there's a lot of people out there say, look, college is a waste. Don't do college. And I can say that applies to certain industries where I don't know that college necessarily is a degree is necessary to do a certain industry. Mm-hmm. But for you, it's a state licensing. You need a degree, you need a bachelor's, and you need a master's to pursue a license
Right.
in therapy, right? So it's a very specific track. Right. At what point in your education process did you realize that you were going to commit all the way through this?
So I had a moment where after I got my bachelor's degree, I knew that grad school was kind of like the next thing that I needed to do, but I didn't have the conviction that I was all in. It was kind of like, okay, this is practical, but there wasn't yet, I felt like the confirmation that it was actually God's path for my life.
And did that matter?
I think it did, because I wasn't sure I was committed to it,
And the reason why I asked that,
Yeah.
did it matter? Because I think some people, they keep God kind of like, we were talking beforehand.
Yeah.
People begin their day, they're saying their morning, oh God, as they're getting dressed, oh God, bless me today. I need, just cover me and I love you and I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place.
Yeah.
And they leave them kind of in the closet and then they go about their day.
Right.
Like there's this great divide of separation unless something bad happens and then they're like, oh God, I need you. Why aren't you engaged?
Right.
So you're talking about a different level of engagement with the living God. You're talking about, hey, what should I do for my career?
Right. And I would say that my relationship with God has been progressive over the years. And
Yes.
it's moments like the moment when you reach out and you really ask him for input into your life and you get the confirmation. Those are the faith building moments where you can start deepening your walk with the Lord.
That's good.
Because
did he respond?
yeah. So basically after I got my bachelor's in the summers, I was working at this resort in Maine. And
There's resorts in Maine.
there was a resort in Kennebunkport, Maine.
I just think of
Called the Colony
freezing cold. I
Hotel.
think of freezing cold Maine.
I mean, it was the summer.
It's still cold in the summer. It's like 75
It
degrees.
really was.
It's still like the
Yeah.
high point is like 75
No,
maybe.
yeah, it was.
70.
It was. I was a waitress.
All right, that's cool.
I was a synchronized swimmer. But anyway, I was there and I hadn't like lined up the ducks for the next thing. So it's getting to the end of the summer and I'm like, Lord, like, I guess I should pray about this. Like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah, that's good.
You know, like I don't feel like I'm ready to go to grad school. I don't feel like I should just be a waitress. But it just so happens that I was in Maine, and in Maine, they let you work in the public school system without a master's for 2 years. But anywhere else, you can't.
Got it.
So, like, if it was in New York, I would have had my master's right away. Anywhere else, I would have had to have my master's right away. So, but I was in Maine. And so I was like, okay. So I just kind of applied around and, you know, like they're so desperate. I mean, every interview, I was offered the job, like in every single interview.
Yes.
So that wasn't the problem. So I moved to Maine. But then it was after the end of 2 years, I was like, okay, I guess this is it.
Yeah.
You know, I have to decide like, and I guess the big thing was money because my salary in Maine was $23,000.
Yeah, it's a good starting pay.
Yeah, which was like about equal to my loans at the time, which seemed like, okay.
So whatever you're making goes right to the loan payment.
It was just kind of all of a sudden it was reality, like what the loans mean and me having to pay them back.
Yeah.
And I was like working as a hostess at Olive Garden. I was doing this and that and the day job.
Wow.
And so I was like, Lord, I don't know. Like, I just don't really feel like you're telling me I should go in debt for this master's. Because it's a big undertaking.
Yeah.
So that's when I was like, really just like, I feel like really poured it out to him. Like, am I even doing what you want me to be doing with my life? Like, is this really what you're calling me to? Maybe you don't even want me to be doing this, because it kind of felt like I was at like a block of some kind.
Yes.
Like there were roadblocks. Like I had to have this to do this. And I was like, I don't know where you want me in this world. I'm in Maine. Why am I here?
Yep.
Why am I in Maine?
There's a lot of great people in Maine, but but still, it's in Maine.
I will say, I don't want to like get off on a tangent. I will say that in those 2 years, I actually formed a very strong community of Christians, which God brought me there for a purpose.
Which is huge.
But that's another whole story. But so but still, like on a professional level, I was like, what am I doing? And I just felt very like strongly in my spirit that I was, did not need to go in debt. But I was like, well, then how is this going to happen? And then one thing led to the next, and I ended up applying to a bunch of grad schools. And I don't know, someone told me, you know how like somebody put a little bug in your ear to apply this and do that. And so I ended up applying for all these like grants. And I did not have like the highest GPA, but I was in a rural school in Maine, which was another thing. Like, why am I in a rural school in Maine?
Backwoods. Yep.
And so it's very competitive, the field of speech pathology, not like law school or something. But the reason why it is because we never have enough.
Correct. Yeah.
So there weren't enough professors. So the grad programs are only like 22 kids. And you might have like 200 people apply for 22 slots.
Wow.
So I didn't get into all the programs. The one in Maine, I did not get in. Because they were preferring people who lived in Maine versus out-of-state people. And I was like an out-of-state person, so they wanted to prioritize the Maine
people. Keep a local
people,
in there,
keep the local people. And so I got a full ride to Penn State, and it was a rural school grant that basically paid for both years of my school and a living stipend. And
that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah. So, and I was like, it was the confirmation.
But you wouldn't have gotten that if you hadn't gone to rural Maine.
Right.
And you wouldn't have gotten a rural grant.
Correct.
No, so it's like a by road A lot of people say, well, I'm going to head to a big city or I'm going to go to a big town.
Yep.
And but it's interesting how you go to kind of like a backwoods place.
Oh, yeah.
You get your feet wet, $23,000 a year.
Yeah.
Start working there.
Yeah.
And then there you're like, you know what? I'm committed to this. But God, if I want to know that you're going to help me because I really don't want a bunch of debt because grad school could have been, what, $100,000 extra?
My grant was $70,000.
For the 2 years.
For the 2 years.
So another $70,000 for a 21-year-old, 22-year-old?
Yeah.
23. I mean,
22. I was 22.
Yeah, that's very expensive. That's a huge burden.
And I already had, the 23,000, which seemed like a lot to me at the time.
Yes,
when you're making $20,000.
Yeah, it's huge, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's $100,000 debt, right?
Yeah.
In school debt. So, but to that point, though, you said, look, I think this is what we have as believers, as someone who truly trusts in the Lord with our whole life, not just segments of our life. When we're in deep trouble, we call on Him, but even when things are going great, we still call on Him, right?
Yeah.
And he said, look, what I heard you say is, I don't want the debt, but I believe this is where you're calling me. But I don't want the debt.
Right. So you're going to have to do something.
Can you do something?
You're going to have to do something.
And so, and he did it.
Yeah.
But it was through other people kind of saying, hey, you should apply for grants.
Yeah.
And
somebody put a bug in my ear.
Specifically for this rural area grants. And I think that's fantastic. So from Penn State, you wind up you finish at Penn State. Where do you go after Penn State?
So the school district, edit that blurb out. Okay. The school district.
No, this is all about speech therapy. I love it. We were so teasing about this earlier. I said, Shelah, you've worked with, I don't know, thousands at this point. Would you say thousands of students?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thousands of students that have speech impediments, right? Which I find to be a lot of fun to be around kids that just don't quite say their words the right way. Like funny, Rocco wants to say oney. And I'm like, dude, that's not correct. But it is funny that you said it that way. But eventually, we can get tongue twisted and tongue-tied as well.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it happens.
This is all about it. Yeah. Because it's life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where were we?
So you're going from Penn State and then you're heading to, how'd you get to Maryland? And how'd you score the job at Frederick for 21 years? That's a long time to be there.
So, Montgomery County Public Schools, they were recruiting at Penn State.
There you go.
So I went to a job fair, and I had a job before, I was even graduated.
That's huge.
They eat up speech therapists. If anybody wants to be a speech therapist, you pretty much can write your ticket. There was one period where right around COVID where I was like, maybe I don't want to be in this school district anymore.
Yeah.
And I just put my resume out, and every day, even to this day,
people are pinging you back.
Please take me off your list. Please take me off your list.
I'm happy where I am. I decided to stick it out.
I decided on.
Yeah, I'm sticking it out. Yeah.
Anyway, so job security is there
for anybody in speech pathology.
For anybody that's there, but so there's not that uncertainty. But that's why I think there has to be a spiritual conviction and calling to stick with it.
Well, you're helping people.
Yeah.
You're helping young people.
Yeah.
They're not just kids. They're not goats, baby goats.
Yeah.
They're young people. They're little people that will one day be adults just like us.
Right.
And either will value the people that poured into them or despise the people that did not.
Yeah.
And should have.
Yeah.
Because we all have that.
Yep.
I felt like you should have treated me better, or why wasn't there not anybody that could have helped me? Right. And we always have these hurdles that we have to overcome.
Right.
Right. And so I think people who step in the position that you're in of serving others, right? We're all called to serve.
Yeah.
Right. And we can do that in how our vocations and our businesses and anything, we can serve other people with services, products. I've talked about that a lot. But specifically serving young people, I think, is very special. But who should do that? Who do you think is it's a great time kind of do a shout out for your industry? Ideal people, what's kind of an idea? If someone says, you know what, that sounds really good, and the money's good, and the money is good, and it's good job security, and you got vacation time, you got summers off, you're kind of in a cool spot to be.
I'll admit, I feel like I've got a pretty good gig. I'll admit it's pretty good.
So you encourage people to get into the industry?
I think it's an awesome profession. I do. I mean, everything that you do for a really long time, there will be moments where you're the grind.
Yeah, of
feeling
course.
like it's the grind, because everything is like that. I don't care what job you have. You're going to have moments where you feel like it's the grind. But it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding. And it's the relationships you form with the kids. I'll have kids come back, after they're grown, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, what's your name? I don't recognize you.
Did they call you? What do they call you?
Miss Maul. Yeah. But as soon as I talk to them, of course I remember. But it's just that moment, like, oh my gosh, you were like this. What happened to you?
Yeah,
Who are you now?
That's kind of a fun experience, anyway.
But it is cool because they are little people
they are,
and they will remember.
They do. Just like us, we still remember.
We still remember
all the people who showed us kindness. We still remember all that.
Yeah. So
what kind of
person you ask?
Yeah.
I will tell you the kind of person that most speech therapists are.
There you go. That's good.
I don't know if this is good or bad or right or wrong, but it's just
like
an observation.
It's an observation of what you see. Yeah.
Of all the people that I went to college with and every speech therapist. I would say speech therapists tend to be a little neurotic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you describe that? Like, what is it?
I mean, type A, kind of like, and it's so funny because when you look at it, it looks like we would be like those free-flowing kind of creative types because we're playing and we're flowing. Yeah. But in our brains it's very analytical about like what is happening. And it's almost like you have to be like hyper in the moment. You have to be like hyper in the moment with the child.
Yeah.
Because you're listening for every single thing they're doing, and everything they're doing is a moment that you're trying to intervene and like guide and correct and shape. And so even if it's a spontaneous interaction, you're like thinking about how you can, and they don't know you're doing it.
Yeah.
So there is a very analytical aspect to it. There's a heavy like paperwork side to it. Well, at least in the school system.
Good, documented all.
Everything's documented, like every session I'm like keeping track of, okay, he said this with 80% accuracy, so that means we have to go to the next level next time, or we need to work on this because he did that with 75%. We need to, it's a detail thing. Mm-hmm. So it tends to attract detail people, I would say.
That's good.
But then you also, and I didn't come into the profession with this is something God worked in me. You have to be flexible. You have to think on your feet, which is not my strength, but it's something that I've gotten better at.
Yeah. Well, you're trying to take young people that are dealing with all the sensories of their own environment and life, and you're trying to get them to focus on playing, but really improving and therapy and nursing them, bringing them back to a place where I hate the word normal, right? But bringing them back to a place where they're capable or
they're just
goals.
An effective communicator.
The
goal is effective communication. That they have a voice and they can use their voice and they can be clear, effective communicators and share with the world what they have to offer.
Yeah,
with nothing blocking them.
That's a great point. We all have a voice, but not. Mm-hmm. But most, I would say, a lot of people do not use their voice.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people will speak, but speaking is like they can speak about anything, right? And they can do a lot of complaining.
Yeah.
But never really improving their situation, right? So it's very intentionally using our voice to build other people up, not to tear them down. Mm-hmm. It's the power of the tongue.
Yep.
Right. You can bring blessing or cursing. Yeah. Right. So I was wondering, just looking at this, how what kind of advice do you have for parents that are listening? I'm sure people who are listening right now are either, they have young children, or they have family members, nieces, nephews, grandkids, who are like, you know what, they need some services. How do we? I mean, I don't think anybody. And so how can you identify whether or not a child needs speech therapy? At least an evaluation, to get to the point of an evaluation. Because many people look at that and say, you just offended me. I can't believe you said that about little Billy. Little Billy is very funny. He's very bad. Yeah. Like, in other words, I'm trying to be silly, but I'm saying, like, some people are offended by the fact you'd even say there's a problem with my child.
Yeah.
Right? But the last thing we'd want to do is not get the help for our child because we have our pride in the way. Mm-hmm. Right? So navigate us through that process, because I'm certain you've seen plenty of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. The kids who don't need it are the ones who have the parents who are advocating for it a lot of times.
Okay, this is good.
And then the ones that really need it, it seems that there's that situation. I've seen it all. But I would say that for parents who, or maybe they're getting feedback from other people. Like you said, maybe they're getting offended. They're getting feedback like, I don't really understand your son or your daughter.
What are they saying?
What are they saying? I mean, that's probably your biggest clue. That maybe just have it looked at. What we do know is that early intervention is very effective. So, the younger you get a child in, I mean, we have kids that are in self-contained classrooms that start out in pre-K, and because they had the early intervention, they end up in gen ed by the time they're in kindergarten or first grade.
That's a big deal.
But if
That's
they didn't,
is that 2 years? Is that a 2 year span or 3 years? What is it?
Like 2 to 3 years. Early intervention is huge for everything in the developmental realm. Now, sometimes when a kid is saying "wunny" for funny, it's developmentally appropriate. So how do you know? I would say for little kids, the main thing to look for is their overall intelligibility. Little kids. Can they communicate to get their needs met, to get their, to express their wants and their needs? Can they comment on the world around them in a way that other people can respond to and understand? Because what you don't want is, your little 3-year-old just starting to identify their sense of self, and they're starting to use their voice, and then to have people like, what, or move on and maybe like just say, oh yeah, and just nod, because you have no idea what they just said.
And not really communicate with them. And they're trying to communicate.
And they're trying to communicate. And so that's formative for them, because they're just starting to use their voice. And so that, we don't want that
that's
for
true.
kids. But if you see that happening, then it is worth kind of setting aside and saying, well, I would also say, don't necessarily go just by your ability to interact with your child, because I was just recently doing like a continuing ed course, and it was talking about intelligibility. And intelligibility is what % can you understand what somebody's saying, basically. And what they found, and this is like why they needed to do a study to figure this out, I think it's common sense. Parents understand their children, and they rate the intelligibility so much higher. And they're their familiar listener. So what you really need to be tuned into are the unfamiliar listeners. How are unfamiliar listeners?
You're in a new setting. And
somebody that doesn't know your child, can they
really
understand?
They really don't understand them. That's a good sign.
Yeah.
That's a good sign right there. It says, hey, so where do they go for evaluation? Like, what's the first step? If you're in rural Maine, where do you go?
I mean, the public school system is pretty set up to equipped. Even if you want to go the private school route, public schools, there's a law. It's called Free Appropriate Public Education. Speech pathologists.
Is that federal level?
Federal level.
That's good.
They're all required by law to have access to speech therapist, physical therapist, occupational therapist through the public system. And so like, let's say you're a procreal student, you can go to the public school and request an evaluation, and they have to complete it.
What if you're homeschooling your kids?
Same.
So they can't block you out?
No. You have access to the public system as a homeschooler. That is how my brother Elijah had therapy in the public school system.
Got it.
So really, as a parent, you would just go. You just need to be an advocate.
Advocate. That's the key thing.
But really, sometimes what happens is they have screening clinics.
Yes.
We have in our county. We have a screening clinic. So if you have a concern, a parent could look up on your website of your local public school system. Usually they'll have a screening clinic. You can take the child to the screening clinic. And from there, they can kind of weed out, okay, he says this, but I wouldn't worry about it for a couple years. Versus the kids were like, yep, let's get them in early intervention. And then those kids, they would move straight to an evaluation. And starting at 3 years old, the public school system provides services for kids.
That's good.
And before 3 years old, it's provided in your home. Now,
do you still go through the school for that?
You
start there.
Yep.
So public
There's
schools.
There's an infants and toddlers program.
So you start
through
there.
The public school system. Yeah.
Okay, that's
now,
good.
is it the same in Texas? I have to ask you.
I believe it is.
It is. Okay. I think the law is federal.
Yeah.
So.
And if you have services or accommodations, they can follow you all the way through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can always
from a federal
get access.
level,
Yep.
So that's it.
You can always get access. Now, obviously, You're more limited than if you were to go the private route. So like, let's say your child is in private school and you want to access the public system. You absolutely can, but it's not going to be on your schedule necessarily. So it's going to be
disruptive to your calendar.
It's going to be when it's going to be during the school hours.
Yeah.
And I know that in our county, a bus will pick up your child if they're in a daycare or at your home, bring them to school for speech therapy, and then like bring them back home.
Wow.
But it's going to be on the speech therapist when she can see the pre-K itinerant. They're called pre-K itinerant kids, or before they're school aged. Or if it's a homeschooled child, it would kind of be the same thing. You'd really have to like work with the speech therapist about when you could actually like do that. And it might not work with your schedule, whatever you have going on.
Correct. Yeah, right. So it's
it's free.
It's great point. Great point. It's so there's a time value money in all things.
Right.
And I think that for us with busy schedules, we have a lot going on.
Yeah.
The one last thing that we want to do is neglect our child.
Right.
Because we have a lot going on and think that he'll just be okay or she'll just be okay. That's a lot of extra money, or that's going to take cost. If you go the private route, then you've got to pay those fees are like, I don't know, $150 an hour. Yeah. $175 an hour, something like that from a private practice. Yeah. And so it is expensive, but I'm always reminded of, we earn money, we make money, we make a living to support our families. First and foremost, it's to support our families, right? And so that's a key thing, is that if one of our family members has a need, a very specific need that's going to cost X amount of dollars, it's not their fault.
Right.
They weren't brought into this world saying, I'm going to cost mom and dad an extra $150 a week,
right?
So that I can have good communication skills, so I can communicate.
Yeah.
But it's part of life, right? And I think some people just kind of get frustrated with that because they're behind, or they're trying to get ahead. But now we have this another thing, and I just reminds me of a story. I had we had the three young girls. We had the babies, the three girls. They're all the twins, and then Val was 18 months separation. So it looked like we had triplets all the time, right?
Yeah.
And so we'd go to the store, and I'd be buying. Megan and I'd be buying groceries and stuff, and one of the guys, some guy behind me says, "Man, I sure do feel bad for you." And I almost
really.
I turned around and I said, "What in the world is wrong with you?
Yeah.
You feel bad that I'm supplying for my family's needs?" Because he saw all the groceries, a full cart, and he's like, "Man, diapers, formula." Like, I'm like, dude. And I'm young 20s. I'm probably 24, 25 at the time. And this guy's like in his 40s. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Wow.
I'm like, what a great pleasure that I have to actually care for my family. And you think you feel bad for me?
Right.
Dude, I feel bad for you. And that stuck with me from in my early 20s. That stuck with me because I got married very early and started a family very young. And so, but I'm like, man, I never want to be that guy. Never want to be that person that would say, oh, I feel bad you got to spend money on that. What else would I spend money on?
Right.
What, just spend it on myself? I see you have beer and cigarettes. Is that what you're spending your money on? Like, because you're caring for yourself, right? Or you're so it's just that mentality of, young people, little people have needs, and it's our responsibility to care for them and provide for them, right? In a joyful way.
Yeah.
Not because they did anything wrong, right?
Yeah.
It's just how God made them at this point. Now let's bring them to the point where we can make sure they're healthy and they're feeling confident in life. And I think that's really important.
I think that's what's very admirable about you, like knowing you all these years, is that, from such a young age, you just kind of like stepped up to the plate in life. I
did.
In every way, whether that's, as a husband, a father, a provider, like, an entrepreneur. You've been an entrepreneur since you were like
really young.
Like really young.
Yep. Really, really young. I think I started my first business when I was 15.
Yeah.
Like real business.
Yeah. I've always admired that about you. I always have told Meg, you've got a good guy. You've got a good guy.
Your parents weren't quite so sure in the beginning. They're like, what is this guy doing? I'm like, he's not going to college. He's not getting a degree. I'm like, I'm just going to work my tail off and it'll work out. And thankfully, Megan was like, yep, I believe that. We're going to do it together. I'm like, yes, let's do it together.
From the beginning, I would say when we were younger, obviously there was that belief that you have to go to the college.
Oh, it was hammered hard.
I feel like when you guys, I feel like more now, people are getting a little bit more okay, there's different paths. I
There
feel
are
like
different
that's
pathways,
becoming more a way to do it. But I feel like when you and Meg were younger, everyone was on the college track. Like,
Yes.
you guys were like trailblazers in that
Like, we're not
realm.
doing that.
Yeah.
We're not going to do it.
Like, the next generation, they're all like trying to find ways to do their own thing. But that
so
was
true.
not the culture that you guys
No,
came out of at all.
90s, 2000, not at all.
No.
It was the computer track. It was like
Yes.
technology. It was like all of that.
College. Like, you had to go to college. Everyone had to go to college. That
Propaganda
was
was really good and strong.
What's it?
Yeah, the propaganda was really good and
It
strong
was.
for college.
I mean, you
Everybody
guys
got these
had-
huge debts.
Right.
Colleges made out like bandits.
Yeah.
Schools were doing really, state schools were doing really well. They were flush with cash.
Yeah.
And you had kids coming out saying, I got a degree in this, but nobody's working in their degree field.
Right.
The people are just getting like the 4-year basic, liberal arts degree.
Right.
And I didn't want to do any of that.
Yeah.
I had several family members, brothers and sisters that got degrees. So I think most of my brothers got a degree in college. I didn't, not in college. I went back and got a Bible degree. I got a seminary degree, Bible school. So I got that, and I love that. And that was like, this is perfect. I did that 10 years after I got married.
Yeah.
So I did it way after night school and all that. But I think now the goal is, like for most people, if you can get them on a track, like you said, get them on a pathway. And we mentioned it, so I love trades, right? Mm-hmm. And if your kid really loves playing in the dirt, mm-hmm. and he loves every piece of equipment, like earth moving equipment, mm-hmm. don't say that's just for that's for a blue collar. Blue collar, white collar is actually started by liberals. They started that. They identified. That was a very Democrat kind of mentality. Let's class people. It's a class.
Right.
Again, it's putting people back in a class. I'm going to go on a rant. Sorry. But
Rant away.
It's putting people in a class system. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a blue collar. Oh, I'm a white collar. Blue collar, I use my hands to make money. White collar, I use my brain to make money.
Yes.
How pious.
Yep.
Everybody's got to use their brain and their hands and everything to earn a living. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I think that whole mentality of, that's a blue collar thing. Well, those blue collar guys are coming out making 6 figures in 5 years. Mm-hmm. And most of you guys, your liberal arts degree, are making what, 30,000, 40,000 mm-hmm. in your retail jobs. And I'm not against a retail job. Yep. I'm not at all. We build retail centers, right? We want people, we need people there, but that might not be your forever job.
Right.
It doesn't have to be your forever job, right? That's the whole idea of building. I'm totally going on a rant. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Totally building the idea of building a $15 an hour job at McDonald's. Mm-hmm. Everybody at McDonald's needs to make $15 an hour. Those are high school kids. They don't need to make $15 an hour. They don't need to be here forever.
Right.
They just need to be here for a time and let the next set of high school kids come in. Yep. And then they can...
Right. It's not supposed to be a living wage.
It's not supposed to be a living wage in fast food.
You're still living with your parents when you had that job.
Yeah. And so I feel like that's been part of our, just being eyes wide open. We're seeing that you chose a career which needed a degree. Mm-hmm. And needed licensing. Yeah. It makes perfect sense. But that was like a very mapped out pathway that brings great value to our communities.
Thank you.
Right? And so again, so knowing what you want to do when you're in high school, kind of mapping it out and then saying, look, I'm going to do it. And as you're praying and you're seeking the Lord and for direction, the Bible says, taste and see that I am good. Mm-hmm. But in order to taste and see, you actually have to put something out there to say, all right, God, I really don't want all this debt. Can you help me somehow? Because I feel that burden. I want to be not yoked to debt. I want to be yoked to you. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that we were talking about that earlier today. I just thought that was really good, is that you had that burden. I didn't want to be burdened with all this debt, but I want to walk this out. Mm-hmm. Is there a way to do it, to do that? And the Lord says, yeah, there is. Here, just trust me. And I'll walk that out with you, and I'll demonstrate how you can do that. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. I feel like whatever path we take, if we are trying to walk with the Lord, we're going to be called to step out in faith in some way, shape, or form. I will say that watching you and Meg and your family, I would say you guys are inspiring because you're called to step out in faith in a much more, you've had to exercise that muscle.
Yes, it's very strong.
You've had lots of opportunities to exercise that muscle. And that's so cool.
Thank you.
It's so cool to see. But yes, even if you kind of you think okay, you have this path and it's predictable, so you wouldn't need as much faith. But I guess God.
I feel like that's a short. You're shortchanging yourself.
But
Life
God
could be so much
is
different.
so efficient
Yeah.
at aligning our circumstances how they need to be aligned to get us to like grow and lean on him and trust in him no matter like what our circumstances are.
Yeah.
He can work through like anything.
Yes.
And it's funny.
And he wants to.
And he wants to.
And he wants to do it.
And we need that. A lot of our life calling is what is going to bring us to a place of that greater faith in him, for our personalities and,
and the impact that you're gonna have on others.
Yeah.
It's like he's always generational.
Right.
Right. So he's always about the next generation. He's all about us, but he's also about the next generation behind us.
Right.
And so if you're constantly pouring into the next generation,
right.
He's like, well, let me keep adding more of myself to you so that you can continue to pour it out to others until they have a trusting relationship in me, right, where they can then be filled up by me directly, which is the Lord saying.
Yeah.
And they can impact others.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful cycle until he returns. It's a beautiful cycle. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. So I was going to ask you, do you and Brian watch Kingdom Heirs?
We do.
So you're a real follower?
We're a real follower. We do. We sit in our family room. We put it up on the TV. We get on our blankets and cuddle up on the couch.
Yeah, because you're in Maryland. Because normally it's cold up there.
Yeah.
You live up in the mountains.
Well, it has been cold.
It has been cold. Yeah, you're down here. It's I think today's gonna be like 75, 80 degrees. It's it's
so nice.
Towards the end of March.
So nice.
Yeah, so we appreciate that. Thank you for sharing your perspective with us today.
Yeah.
We had planned to have Brian on today.
I know.
And Brian's a little bit under the weather.
Yes, so Brian's the entrepreneur of the family.
Brian is the entrepreneur of the family with his family law firm. But I am. We're still holding out for my lawyer interview.
That's right.
with Uncle Brian, as the girls know him, Uncle Brian. So he's going to have some great insight when we get him on. So we're grateful that you stepped in today.
Thank you.
And so Shelah, is there anything new that you're working on that you want to share with the audience? Something new that you're working on?
All right.
Some endeavors that you're considering?
So I'm dabbling in the entrepreneurial world.
Come on.
Dabbling. I just started last summer. It's just a Teachers Pay Teachers store.
Teachers Pay
Teachers is the name of the site. If you are in the education world, you know Teachers Pay Teachers.
.com?
Yeah. Yeah.
You got
it's
the .com?
It's basically like a household name.
You got the .com?
Well, no, Teachers Pay Teachers is the platform
That's the
that
platform.
I have. It's kind of like the Etsy of speech.
Okay, good.
It's kind of like the Etsy of education materials.
That's what I'm asking. Okay, good.
So my store is called Speak and Sprout, and it's on Teachers Pay Teachers. However, I'm working on the inventory.
Come on.
Okay.
Come on.
But
what's the vision for it? Give the vision.
Okay. So the vision is,
excuse me.
I decided that I wanted, after 20 years, you have learned a lot on the ground, I guess. And you kind of get to a point, and maybe you feel this way, where you want to start kind of like sharing
Hence why I started Kingdom Heirs.
Yes. You get to a point where you feel like, okay, I can add something to this community now. I'm not just learning anymore. I have some insights
now you need
that
to pour it back out. You've got it now. Now you need to share it. Yeah.
Right. And there's a creative aspect that I'm a little bit of a creative too.
Yes.
So I'm creating materials primarily for my autistic kind of population, a lot of sentence frames or picture supports and things like that for other speech therapists or teachers.
I love it.
To access and help support their kids. And also, I guess parents could access it as well. I was telling actually Kay, I make these little mini books and I'll work with it in speech and I'll send it home with the kid that day so the parents can see it at home and kind of carry over at home. And I've actually gotten some really good feedback on those. The parents were like, oh,
this is
I love those little booklets you send home.
This is good.
So that's what it is.
I think that's a great segue. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
What is the vision? The vision is that when I retire from the county, I'll have basically poured into it little by little so that by the time I'm ready to kind of be done actually working in the school district, I'll kind of have something I can transition to. So it is kind of my official name, Speak and Sprout. And it's going somewhere, but it's in the seed. It's in it's a sprout right now.
I love that.
It's a little sprout.
Come on, that's
a little baby sprout right now.
That's where most entrepreneurs are.
Yeah.
people think, oh, he's an entrepreneur. Well, he had to start somewhere.
Right.
Right? He had to start somewhere. She had to start somewhere.
I'm in the starting.
And you start the sprout. Right. But if you don't water it, it won't grow.
Right.
And if you don't give it any sunlight, which means if you don't talk about it, it won't grow.
I know. I think there is, and maybe you can speak to this, there's something inside that's like, I don't want people to know about it until it's amazing.
Yeah.
But then
I know
it's kind of like, well, it's not going to get amazing until I like
start talking about putting it out there.
About it.
So it's afraid of failure, because what if it doesn't really happen? And then I'm gonna it's like a big letdown. I told everybody I was gonna do it, and then it doesn't actually become anything, and then it becomes nothing.
Yeah.
And then it's so there's most people that start out are deathly afraid of starting out because of failing. And what I've told many young people and older people is that failure is designed to keep you out of the game. By nature, failure, they want you to fail. Just the idea of like failure is like a big bad guy. Just think of failure as a big bad guy. Mm-hmm. He wants to keep you out so that you never really try again, right? So, but failure, my perspective is failure is when I fail, I'm going to take out my notebook and I'm going to write down every little note that I needed to know about how I failed, why I failed, and how I'm not going to do that again, because it's a mistake, right? So your last mistake is your greatest teacher. And so failure is fuel for progression. Mm-hmm. And so you just have to be comfortable with that. And people have to be comfortable with failing out the gate. Yep. And if you fail out the gate, dust yourself off and try again, right? And then that's where our God is a creator. And we are created in his likeness. So we are also creators from not, like we can take all the elements of the earth and create this bottle, right? But humans created the bottle, but he created all the elements. So we work within that. But you're not always going to get it right out the gate. Right. So if we gave up every time, well, we would have nothing. We wouldn't have this space that we're sitting in today, right? Because it all came from someone who took that initiative, failed out the gate, and or down the line. At some point, they failed multiple times. So once we get comfortable with failure, we actually start progressing very quickly. Yeah.
And I will say, I have made a commitment to myself that I will reevaluate in 5 years.
It's good.
So because I feel like there will be, a growing curve with that. And a lot of the people, we always look at the people who are here.
Yeah, they don't.
And we compare ourselves to those people.
There's
so
no reason
even
to do
on
that.
Teachers Pay Teachers, you have those people that are there. And if you compare yourself to those people, I mean, I'll look back and I'll say, oh, they started this over 10 years ago. They've been doing this over 10 years. So how could I possibly catch up?
Yeah.
Or so for me,
be at
I'm
their
like,
same level or what have you.
So what I tell myself is, okay, in 10 years, I'm going to retire from the county. I've got 10 years to get there.
Well said.
And that's like a better mindset to have.
Big perspective.
So now it's like, I was actually talking to the girl, Kay, about this last night, and the girl's like, I kind of celebrate everything I sell. It's like, they're like $2.
Yeah.
Like $3 materials.
I love it.
Right? Some of them are more, but like most of them are,
yeah.
I'm making hundreds of dollars.
Yeah,
James.
and it's affordable. And you're making it affordable. But it's law of large numbers, like anything.
Well, that's it. So the people who end up being successful at it, they end up getting, like so many people, like they end up becoming, quantity versus like you end up getting like 500 products, right? In your store.
Yeah.
And if you have that many things in your store that are selling for $3,
oh my goodness,
and then you have a lot of people buying them, it can easily like snowball.
Correct.
But it's a snowballing thing, and a lot of the people who say that they kind of start seeing the snowball thing, they say they have, at least 300 things in their store.
I love it.
Guess how many I have in my store?
You got 3?
20.
20's good.
So
20's great.
I'm just keeping
You're on.
But I'm not giving up. And every weekend I'm working at something in 5 years.
So that's a great.
Giving myself 5
That's
years.
a really great point, and we'll close with this. I would say, if you're going to start something, just be committed to the process, and don't get discouraged. Don't quit your day job yet. Do the side hustle. Do the side hustle.
Yep.
Do the side hustle and be faithful with your primary job. Your income source. Be faithful there, but you got to be faithful to the side hustle of getting this out there, because you're preparing. It's farming.
Yeah.
If you don't sow the seed and you don't water it, it's not going to be there when you need it most.
Yeah.
And so I would say that's the key thing for anybody and everybody that's starting out, which I love the fact that it's an offshoot of what you do now, It's like, well, I do this and it's very resourceful. I should offer this to others, and not a huge dollar amount, but a small dollar amount, and they can build from that. So you're making it obtainable for people to get the resources they need, because we know most teachers don't make huge money, but they have a huge heart to reach the kids, their children, right? So I think that's a big deal. So some good truths there.
Yeah, good
Shelah,
job,
thanks for coming on today.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being here. And guys, if you liked what you heard today, if you would like, subscribe, and ring the bell, please comment. We're going to make it available for Shelah's link there on the site as well. So if you want to connect with her there, you can. But thank you again, guys. We love you guys. Take care, and we'll see you next time.